Get ready. You're listening to Give God 90 live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome everyone to Give God 90. We are live on a Thursday night, and we're both here, surprisingly. Well, yes. I'm here and awake. You're here and almost awake.
I'm here in body.
Okay, and we are live on Spreaker and on Facebook tonight. And as people start checking in here, we'll say hi, I hope. Something very interesting is getting ready to happen tomorrow. You know how we celebrate July 4th as Independence Day from Great Britain, right? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow marks Great Britain's Independence Day from the European Union.
Go Brexit!
and a couple of weeks ago, we did a show on why that's so important. Hi, Pam. Glad to see you join us.
Hi, Pam.
So, I think it's kind of funny because we celebrate our independence on July 4th. Great Britain's new Independence Day is January 31st. So they're leaving the European Union, and that's a good thing. The other thing, before I get too far along, is I want to make sure everybody, if you haven't downloaded the Give God 90 app, it's out there. It's free. It takes about a minute to download, and you can go back through all the podcast archives and check that out. It just, hey, there's Jay's watching.
Hi, Jay.
But it gives you all kinds
Tina.
of
hi, Carol.
all kinds of good stuff to go with that. I get to start something tomorrow. And I know that's kind of dangerous when you get that look, but I typically avoid speaking about Revelation because when you speak about Revelation, it's when's the world going to end?
Right.
But I'm going to begin, hopefully not terribly long series at Messianic Delaware, and I thought, what the other thing I could do is kind of to go along with that, and so it kind of keeps my brain in the right gear, is on Mondays I'll go where I record the podcast, I go into a little more depth. I'll start kind of mirroring a lot of the things that I say with that, and kind of taking the folks who aren't readily available or might not have access to the video that we produce as well that goes with those teachings. They could get it on Spreaker, and hopefully I can explain it to those folks over the audio without using the slides. Mm-hmm. So, and I know it's going to take me 2 weeks to do that every 1 week using the slides because it's just a little bit more in depth. But we'll try that and see how it works. Hopefully it will work out and will be good. But tonight, you can't stop progress. When I was growing up, now here's the thing, folks. For those of you who don't know or didn't read the book, I grew up on a farm just outside of a small town. And as a small town, which is very near a beach, or a couple of beaches actually, less than a mile from the ocean and less than a mile from the Delaware Bay, houses started growing up around because people wanted to move here. And, the more houses grew up, people kind of got concerned about urban sprawl and some other things at the time. And I was told, well, you can't stop progress. And it's true, you can't stop progress. Now that a lot more people have gotten here and the place is really, it doesn't resemble anything like it was when we were young.
No.
There's a lot more houses, a lot more everything.
A lot less open land.
Yeah, and the thing is, you still can't stop progress. And a couple of people over the last several weeks have talked about wish we could go back to the way things were. Wish we could go back to the way things were. Why can't we go back to the way things were? And believe it or not, God sets a precedent in Genesis, and I am not talking about the Red Sea crossing here. Okay? Long before that happened, he sets a precedent, and he repeats it over and over and over again that you can't ever go back. So if you want to start in your Bible, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 3 first, because this is interesting. Adam and Eve have just sinned, and God is laying out their punishment. We're going to go to verses 19 through 24, so it's near the end of chapter 3. And he's just laid out their punishment, and now he's about to do something they probably didn't expect. So go ahead and start in 19.
By the sweat of your brow will you eat food, until you return to the ground, since from it since from it were you taken. For you are dust, and to dust will you return. Now Adam named his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Adonai Elohim made Adam and his wife tunics of skin, and he clothed them. Then Adonai Elohim said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. So now, in case he stretches out his hand, and takes also from the tree of life, and eats it, and lives forever. Adonai Elohim sent him away from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. And he expelled the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he had seraphim dwell along with the whirling sword of flame to guard the way to the tree of life.
So do you think there was any way they were going to go back to the garden?
No.
I mean, it's very specific. He sets a cherub up there to guard. And I think some places, did it say anything about a flaming sword there?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a flaming sword wielded by a divine being who is fierce. I mean, this guy is fierce. There's no way Adam and Eve are getting back into the garden. Just not going to happen. Impossible. Did they want to? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. They wanted to. But, God said, no. I brought you up out of the dust. Now, you're going to work for what you get. You're going to know what it is to work. You're going to know what it is to be hungry. You're going to know what it is to have all of these. You're not done with there. Go to chapter 6. You're going to know what it is to have all of these things, because even though this was very, very good, and we know that when God says something's very good, we could consider it perfect. But maybe God didn't think it was good enough. Maybe he had something better in mind. Now, if you look at Genesis chapter 6, verses 6 through 8.
So Adonai regretted that he had made mankind on the earth, and his heart was deeply pained. So Adonai said, I will wipe out mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the ground, from the mankind to livestock, crawling thing and flying creature of the sky, because I regret that I made them. But Noah found favor in Adonai's eyes.
Noah found favor in the eyes of the Almighty. But everybody else was dirt, basically, right? Now, it's interesting that he said, I resent that I have made man. He kicked Adam out. People just kept getting worse. Now he's wondering, maybe this wasn't as good as I thought it was, right? So now he's working towards something new. He's not got I hate to say a new plan, but he's moving forward with a plan that he's already had. And it's not that he's sending anybody backwards. He's moving them forward. Does that make sense? Genesis 7, if you look at the near the end of Genesis 7, beginning in verse 19, excuse me, it says the flood was 40 days on the land, and the waters increased and lifted the ark. So Noah's got the ark built. Everything's going according to plan here. The waters overpowered and became very mighty over the land, and the ark drifted on the surface of the water. The waters completely empowered the land so that all of the high mountains beneath the entire sky were covered. Do you think there's any going back from that?
No.
You don't go back. Again, it's you don't go backwards. You can never go backwards. He lays all this out. Verse 21, all flesh perished. Those that crawl on the land and flying creatures, livestock, wild animals, creatures that swarm on the land, all of humankind. Everything that had the breath and the spirit of life in its nostrils, everything on dry land died. So he wiped out all the existence that was on the surface of the ground. Everything from people to livestock to crawling creatures to flying creatures in the sky, they were wiped out on the land. Only Noah and those with him in the ark survived. The waters overpowered the land for 150 days. There was no going back.
There wasn't.
There are translations that read it was destroyed. The earth was destroyed, right?
Right.
Not like it's going to be later and created new, but almost. He's moving forward. He's not moving backwards. You starting to get a theme with this?
Can't stop progress.
You can't stop progress. He's saying, nope, you keep on going. In Genesis chapter 12, now, instead of everybody, we're looking at individuals. And the individual we're going to look at is, of course, Abraham. And it starts right out. The Almighty said to Abram, get out of the country and from your family, get out of your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make you a great name. Now, there's a promise he hadn't promised before. When he's dealing with individuals, and sometimes when he's dealing with entire groups of people, not only is he giving them the instructions to go somewhere you can't come back from, but now he's saying you get a reward along with it. I'm going to do something for you. If you go over here, I'm going to do something. You can never go back. You can go get eventually he's going to go get his son's wife from there. He won't. He's going to actually send somebody. He never does go back to where his father's house was. In Exodus 14, Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and beheld the Egyptians were marching after them. And they were terrified. The children of Israel cried out to the Lord and said to Moses, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness because there were no graves in Egypt? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense there, but there's more to that than that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Why have you dealt with us this way to bring us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, leave us alone so that we can serve the Egyptians? It was better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. The thing is, in the very next verse, we get the reward, this time for an entire group of people. Moses said to the people, don't be afraid, stand still, and see the salvation of the Almighty, which He will perform for you today. You have seen the Egyptians today, but you will never see them again, ever. The Almighty will fight for you while you hold your peace. That is a reward right there. He's talking about salvation. He's talking about the Almighty doing things instead of them taking the action and doing it. He says, just watch. You just stand back and watch. After this, there's no going back. There's no going back. But you know how that mixed multitude was, right? They whined, they complained, they grumbled, they were miserable. And in Exodus 16, they journeyed from Elim to the entire community, they journeyed from Elim, and the entire community of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after leaving the land of Egypt. But the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron. Here we are, just a few days after what they had seen. Just a few days. The children of Israel said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread until we were full. But you have brought us into this wilderness to kill the entire congregation with hunger." Yeah, I just a few days, and they were complaining again. But there's a reward. There's a reward promised here. The Almighty said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. The people will go out and gather a day's portion every day, so I can test them to find out whether they will walk according to my instructions or not. So on the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather any other day." So here we see, we're hungry. You brought us out here to starve to death. Just wait. Something better's coming. Something better's coming. Have y'all heard the story of the fork? Where the lady wants to be buried with a fork, right? And everybody kind of made fun of her and said, "Why do you want to be buried with a fork?" And she said, "Well, in all these covered dish dinners that we have, they tell you to keep your forks because dessert's coming." I want dessert. That's mostly our problem. We want dessert without getting the meal. Y'all think about that. We want dessert without getting the meal, and we can't have it that way. Our Creator doesn't design us to go backwards. He didn't leave Adam and Eve in the garden, and he didn't let them go back. He didn't leave Noah, like the last righteous person in the world, to suffer with everybody else. He had him move forward. Excuse me. He didn't leave the children of Israel in the desert to die, and he didn't leave them in Egypt to be killed by the Egyptians. He moved them forward and made it impossible for them to go back, no matter how much they complained. Every time we see something, it's moving forward. It's getting better. He's preparing something else to push us along. Isaiah 43:19. "Here I'm doing a new thing. Now it's springing up. Don't you know? How can't you see it? I will surely make a way in the desert, rivers in the wasteland." Again, talking about moving forward. Not going back to the way it was, but moving forward to something better. Isaiah 65:17. "Behold, I create new heavens and a new earth." Isaiah 65:17. He's talking about creating new heavens and a new earth. Hey, there's Francisco. Hey, Francisco, how are you doing? He's talking about moving forward. I'm going to make something new, and the former things will not be remembered or ever come to mind. Isaiah 51, we'll back up just a little bit. It says, "Now the ransomed of the Almighty will return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will be on their heads. They will obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing will flee away." He's talking about moving forward, not going backwards, but moving forward. I know a lot of times we talk about getting back to paradise, I guess is how some people would say. We're going back to the Garden of Eden. No, we're not going back to the Garden of Eden. We get a new paradise. We get something. Hey, Leah.
Hi.
We get something even better, because what we're going to get now is not, a forest to live in. We get houses. We get luxury apartments, or whatever your wildest dream is. You can't even begin to imagine what's coming. Isaiah 66:22. "For just as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, will endure before me." It is a declaration of the Almighty. So your descendants and your name will endure. One of the worst punishments that the ancient Hebrew people could imagine wasn't suffering eternal torment. They didn't think of being punished that way. One of the worst punishments they could come up with was that they didn't have any descendants to remember who they were. If you were forgotten, that was the absolute worst thing it could be thought of. Because if people that you were around forget you, then you stand the chance of being forgotten by the Almighty. That was their way of getting into that, and I get into that in a little bit more detail when I look at Revelation. Now, I just read you the part from Isaiah about the new heaven and new earth. They pick up on this in Revelation 21. I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no more sea. Sorry, fishermen. You don't. The one thing you're not going to worry about is going fishing in the New Jerusalem, because apparently there's not going to be any more ocean to do that in. You get the river with the tree of life on either side. You don't have to fish for
river. It might be Big River.
It might be, but you don't have to fish for your food anymore. It's like you don't need to work for it. It's going to be better than it would have been in the garden.
So you just hold the pan up there and it jumps in.
Already filleted, already fried.
Fried?
Yeah, gluten-free fish fry. You didn't think I was going to say that, did you? Our Creator is continually trying to improve us. He's always working on us. He never stops molding and doing his thing. Remember, he's the potter, we're the clay. The clay's not taken off the wheel until it's ready to have something drastic happen to it. We use this metaphor often. But what happens to that piece of pottery when it comes off that potter's wheel? Where does it go? Do you know where it goes? Because you've done plaster.
Goes in a kiln.
It goes in a kiln. It gets, they call it firing.
After it dries.
Yeah, it's called firing.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. You take this piece of pottery and you set it down and you let it dry, and then you put it in a fire.
Really hot.
A really, really hot fire. But he's the potter and we're the clay. Remember that. Is there any wonder you want to go back on the wheel? You want to go back to Egypt? You want to go back to where you wanted? Because what's coming might not be easy until you get to the other side of it. But once you go through that fire, typically that, there you go, Leah, it comes out in fire. Mm-hmm. Once you go through that fire, what happens to that piece?
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's shiny. Mm-hmm. They glaze it. They do all the fancy stuff to it. That's when it's finished. Mm-hmm. So is there any wonder when we look at Revelation chapter 1 where John gets the vision of Yeshua standing there in his resurrected body, that it's like shiny bronze, burnished bronze? He's been through it. Mm-hmm. He's gotten to the other side. He knows where he's going with it. Our Creator is not satisfied with us until he considers us perfect. But we oftentimes want to keep going back. Mm-hmm. We want to keep going back. Oh, I wish it was like it was 20 years ago. I wish it was. I don't know how many times I've ever heard people say, I wish it was like it was 50 years ago. Bread was 50 cents or a quarter a loaf. And I say, yeah. And people were still using outhouses too, right? You want to use the outhouse? No, you want to progress. You want to get better. Leah says, I want to be shiny and fancy. You already are, young lady. Yeah. And by the way, if you need to check out her jewelry, because she is starting to do some really nice looking, just
I've been sharing it on my Facebook page, so hopefully somebody out there on my Facebook page is going, "Hi, I want that."
Yeah, you talk about something. I don't know. Does that get fired? You can answer that if you want to, Lee. If that goes through a firing process,
don't know
of some type. But he doesn't let us stay stagnant. He keeps us moving. And he wants us to move forward, to look for something better. He doesn't want us to be satisfied with who we are. He wants us to strive to be better people. He wants us to strive to be better at helping others, better at loving others, better at benefiting the people around us. And the only way I know that we can do that is to follow his instructions, so that we have that opportunity to recognize who needs help and what kind of help to give them. Yes, it does. Okay, so that stuff does go through a firing process. Same thing when she's putting that together, and I don't know if I haven't seen any of her unfinished stuff. I don't think before it's fired, so it might not be as shiny and pretty, but when it comes out, it really is, and it just makes a huge difference.
It does. It's beautiful.
So, when we think about striving to be better, it's not goes through the oven, the sunlight cures the resin as well. Oh, cool. So
Nice.
that's like a complicated process. I'm glad you're doing it and not me. I really am. That looked like Sean. So as we think about these things, we go through this process as well. We look at all of these things and we say, guess what? He's the potter, we're the clay. He's going to take us off the wheel. He's going to put us through the fire, and when we get done, it's going to be a whole lot better. But you can never go back on the wheel. You can never go back to Egypt. Trust me, folks, we've lived places where there was no running water. You don't want to go back to using the outhouse. Move forward. It's not a terrible thing to step forward, move forward. Hey, Sean, it was you I saw.
Hi, Sean.
It's not a bad thing to move forward. I've said before that sometimes when people want to overtake our vocabulary, and today progressive is supposed to be a bad word. If we progress properly and we progress biblically, then what we wind up with is, Leo said, no, it's not pretty at first. It's more plain, more plasticky. Oh, cool. So she's actually taking something that's, if I can say this, probably looks like a child's toy, and running it through
Well, like the play putty?
Yeah. That's kind of the picture I have in my mind. And running it through the process that she does, and then it comes out very shiny like like glass. So there it is. Same process. You're doing the same thing she's doing the same thing with her jewelry that the Almighty's doing with us.
That's it.
People never stop. They want to say, oh, I want to be molded. Oh, I want to be, let him mold me in his image.
And glaze me and paint me.
But that's where they want to stay. They think they can live there. They think they can camp out on that potter's wheel.
No.
You don't get to camp out on the potter's wheel, folks. He takes you off the potter's wheel. He puts you in that kiln.
Yeah.
So, don't if you're not in this for the complete process, you're not going to be finished.
No.
And you want to be finished. So
that's it. You do.
That's what we need to do. We want to look forward. Get through the process, get through the progress until you reach your final destination, and hopefully, the final destination you're looking for is that New Jerusalem eventually. But the thing is, you can't go backwards. No, we don't get the chance to go back. You don't want to go back. Somebody asked me not too long ago, because somebody I hadn't seen for a while. They said, well, don't you want to be like you were when you were 20? And I said, no. Trust me. And
we don't want to go back to 20.
People don't want me to be 20 again. The world couldn't survive me being 20 again.
You wouldn't survive being 20 again.
That's probably true too. But anyway, that is. I'm glad we waited till I was about done to say that. Folks, really think about when you move forward. You've got these things that are happening to you. You're going through these processes for a reason. We talk about, pastors love to talk about baptism. And they talk about, oh, it's so good when you go down and when you come back up, here you are. But they always don't like to talk about this baptism of fire. And that's what it is when you're taken off of that potter's wheel and you're put in that kiln. That's what it really is. When, before you're finished. That's what it is. So these metaphors that, King James puts in the Bible, they're nice, but you got to finish them because you don't get to camp out. If you're going to think about it, if you're on a journey and you have a destination in mind, why would you want to stop at like
halfway
point, or not even a halfway point,
or even 3/4 and not get there?
We stopped at some nice hotels when we travel. Well, I say nice hotels; they're not like 5-star things. It was a place, a clean place to sleep that had a swimming pool for the kids, and that was our requirements.
Well, hot tub for us to relax after driving for 15 hours.
And some of them serve a pretty good meal too. So, why? But you don't camp out there. No. You don't camp out there. You finish the journey. Paul says you run the race. Whatever metaphor you want to use, you get to your finish line. So, hopefully, now I have convinced you that you can't go backwards. And the reason you can't go backwards is the Almighty has set that precedent a long, long time ago, long before Moses ever was interviewed for his job on the mountain. So that's all I needed to say tonight, because you just can't go backwards. It doesn't work. We're not designed to go backwards. We're designed to move forward.
We're going to be pretty jewelry.
And to be pretty jewelry. To be that whatever it is that you're designed to be, whether it's a necklace or a bracelet, whether it's a bowl or whatever it happens to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, we certainly appreciate all of your input, all of your kind comments.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit the like and share buttons. We really appreciate those too.
Yes,
and
we do.
Let's see. I get to talk at Messianic Delaware tomorrow night, and Monday's podcast, if I can hopefully remember to put that out before I go to Hebrew class. Sometimes it's a little later because I forget it, but I will try to remember to put that out. Will be on Revelation as well.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for all the likes, loves, and shares. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we
Till
do.
next time, have a blessed week.
Bless you, everyone.